Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be honest with you, I've been struggling with how to make this video, how I want to come across in it. I've been planning this one since last week after watching episode 3 of The Mandalorian. One of my biggest issues with the storytelling in Star Wars happened yet again, and I was kind of fired up. But I'm glad that I kind of held back and didn't come out with a rant video quickly because I was able to calm down while I was working on last week's videos, and I was able to watch the 4th episode of this season, and I was able to go back to enjoying the story and just come back in with a clear mind, because I really strive to, not only for this channel but just in life in general, try to take a moderate approach. And if I'm gonna critique things and give analysis, try to just be balanced as I understand what's going on here. So I don't want to be a channel that's just ranting and going full scorched earth on Star Wars or something that I have an issue with. So in this video, I want to talk about why I'm a bit frustrated with Disney's storytelling in Star Wars of late, and I also have an issue with the way officials at Disney and Lucasfilm are handling accountability with the current state of the franchise. So I will be giving some thoughts on those two things in this video. I've had my issues with Star Wars over the past couple of years, but I love this franchise, and I always have made it a point to stick around. I always maintain the same mindset with every new piece of content that they come out with. I always go in with a fresh and positive mindset. I want to give everything a fair shot. And I, like many others, had my issues with the sequel trilogy, but I never gave up on Star Wars. Hell, I've been staying up and watching all these new episodes at 2 a.m., and I've made some content recently on The Mandalorian and The Bad Batch, and I really am excited. I'm kind of disappointed that I'm coming on to YouTube today with this video mad, a little bit conflicted. I don't know how to feel. And when Disney Plus was announced, I was very excited for the potential of more Star Wars and even Marvel content. It wasn't just all Star Wars that I was pumped up for. But, sticking with Star Wars here, we had some great animated shows like the Clone Wars and Rebels, but we were lacking the live action experience. And when you look back at the list now of all the shows that have come out or have at least been announced or in production, on paper, it looks like a great variety. The Mandalorian, Book of Boba, Kenobi, Ahsoka, Andor, Bad Batch, Acolyte, Skeleton Crew, Tales of the Jedi, Visions, and even that other kid animated show, Resistance. And, as always, the fan base has mixed feelings with it all, but at least there's something for everyone, and I don't think you have to love and give every show a 10 out of 10 for Star Wars to still be successful. But I'll be honest, for me being an old fan, I looked forward to shows like Kenobi and the Book of Boba because they featured old characters, characters I knew of, I grew up with, that are popular. Even Boba, who very little screen time but is loved in comics, and people really like the character for what he was. And like I said earlier, I was very excited talking about Mando and the Bad Batch a few weeks ago. But then The Mandalorian did something in episode 3 that I have despised for over a year now with Star Wars storytelling. The writers sidestepped around Mando and Bo-Katan's story to give us almost an hour's worth of a side story about former Imperial officers living on Coruscant going through the New Republic's amnesty program, which gives former Imperials the chance to redeem themselves and get started on new lives. Now, Dr. Pershing's return is really cool. If you remember, he's the scientist who was working on Grogu back in the day doing experiments and stuff. And, this story was interesting. I actually liked it. Like, it sounds like I'm shitting on it, but I liked it. It's just I don't like the placement of it. It's going to be interesting to see what's happening here because something fishy is going on. This seems to be hinting towards the next big threat in this show, and the Empire still trying to do something. Now, if this show is going to be focusing on cloning, then oh boy, it's probably going to head into the direction of the sequel trilogy and have something to do with Palpatine and Snoke. So with this side story, we did get an indication, a little hint to a new threat brewing. But I'm going to be honest with you, I'm really getting sick and tired of Star Wars shows halting the momentum of a storyline and making the main characters, the ones titled in the name of the show, have to play second fiddle to these new characters and other plot points. And don't get me wrong, it's not like these other characters don't matter. Some of them are actually catalysts to the main plot of the story, to what's coming up next. So it makes sense for them to be there and get their time. That's why I'm conflicted here, because I want to be mad and critical, but I also understand what's going on. I just wish they would reconsider the placement of some of these moments. Like the first episode of Season 3 was short and relatively simple. Now what if you threw in some of that Coruscant stuff in the first episode, and then you put the second half of it in episode 3? I don't understand how you cut right into the middle of Mando and Bo escaping the TIE interceptors. That was a big moment. Bo's home gets bombed and destroyed. You don't even get a chance to see her reflect or have a conversation with Mando after this happens. And episode 4 then was awesome. I really love the stuff going on with the Mandalorians and Grogu. I think it's awesome to see some Grogu development. He gets a new piece of armor. He does a little bit of training. You get an awesome flashback that shows how he survived Order 66. However, it's a 30-minute episode. Episode 3 was 56 minutes, and what, like 40 minutes of that went to the former Imperial officers? Yes, like I said, they are trying to set up the bad guys. But that 40-minute story gave us a hint that something is up. We don't know who is behind any of this. We don't know what is truly up. It was 40 minutes of a side adventure story that, while it was interesting, I just felt like it was too long. The pacing of this season and the jumping around time-wise with this story, even dating back to the stuff that happened in the Book of Boba, is just a little odd to me. It feels like this story is being rushed and a bit disjointed. The pacing and storytelling decisions would perhaps not be an issue if the season was longer. I know I might be getting annoying with always bringing up this point, but I truly think these episodes and these seasons need to be longer. They are trying to tell a complex story, but it's tough to do that in 8 episodes and having most of these episodes only be like 30 to 40 minutes long. And other shows have done this too, like in the Book of Boba. Remember the trailers for the show? They gave off like a mafia vibe. You're seeing Boba return, and it looks like he's trying to take a claim in Mos Espa. Remember when they showed him trying to talk to the other crime families? You're thinking like maybe this is Star Wars Mafia. Awesome, right? Well, Boba himself never really lived up to the hype, and the Mandalorian stuff that was injected into the show was honestly some of the best stuff and the most memorable part of his show. A legendary character was given the chance to be in the spotlight, and it gave an opportunity to Tamora Morrison, who totally deserved the opportunity to play this character and play a big role in Star Wars again. Because this was a character and an actor that fans cared about and truly had some type of interest in. Now, the greatest sin of them all came in the Kenobi series, the show that brought back Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor to reprise their roles of Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, you know, 2 of the most important characters in the franchise. And they even brought in the Inquisitors, including the Grand Inquisitor, who we know from Rebels. But wait, the character that mattered the most in this show was the new character Reva, who can survive multiple lightsaber stab wounds and literally almost break the plot of the original Star Wars by going after Luke at the end. I'm just getting tired of seeing Star Wars shows sidelining the main characters of these shows, the characters we care about the most. And the way they're injecting new characters and their stories in between just makes these stories feel disjointed. I almost feel like it's false advertising too. No, I'm not saying we gotta go sue them, but it's almost like I need to go back and rewatch the trailers and the teasers to make sure I didn't miss something, or to make sure that I didn't misunderstand what was being shown. You could sit here and tell me that I'm just nostalgic and I want fan service, but the people that are upset about this stuff like me are upset because we're watching The Mandalorian to see The Mandalorian and Grogu. We're watching the Book of Boba to see Boba Fett. We're watching Kenobi to see Kenobi and Darth Vader. Of course, you need new characters and new plot points to drive a story and create something here, but it's not doing these characters and these stories justice by sidelining them. Now for the second part of this video. The heads of Disney and Lucasfilm still don't seem to get it, or they just don't want to admit some of their mistakes. Bob Iger has come back to help get the ship right at Disney, and he's made some interesting comments recently in regards to really the future content of Disney as a whole, but obviously I'm going to target the Star Wars stuff. And there's actually one thing I do agree with him on, and I'm happy to hear that Disney will focus more on the quality of the product than the quantity of the product going forward. They were too aggressive with Disney Plus, he claims, and I agree. We don't need a brand new show from Star Wars or even Marvel for that matter every 4 to 6 weeks. And I'm not gonna lie though, I laugh when I hear them talk about cutting back because of expenses. Like, you own Star Wars and Marvel. I know this stuff ain't cheap, but they are cash cows. It's like they forget that they made, or don't want to admit, that they made a controversial sequel trilogy. And if their numbers are down from toy sales or anything related to those movies, well, you already know why. But they continue to ignore that at the company. So here's Iger's quote. Star Wars. We made 3 what we called saga films, which is obviously the successors to George Lucas's first 6. They did very well at the box office. Tremendously well, as a matter of fact. We've made 2 so-called standalones in Rogue One and Solo. Rogue One did quite well. Solo was a little disappointing to us. It gave us pause to just think maybe the cadence was a little too aggressive. And so we decided to pull back a bit. We still are developing Star Wars films. We're going to make sure that when we make one, that it's the right one. So we are being very careful here. Again, totally agree, totally appreciate the extra thought and care and the slowing down of this whole process of making future content. I'm here for it. But it's funny because you're acknowledging all the movies you made and like to point out the fact that they made a nice amount of revenue at the box office, but it's too expensive to make the content? I don't get it. And I also love the fact that the Han Solo movie continues to get thrown under the bus, even to this day, years later. Yes, the movie got decent scores at best. Yes, it was a standalone movie. But do you remember when this movie came out? 5 months after The Last Jedi, the most controversial Star Wars movie ever made. The movie that literally divided the fan base. But it's Solo's fault. Disney officials have been using this as an excuse for a while now, and it's driving me crazy. Even Kathleen Kennedy had a weird take on it too. This is what she said. "There should be moments along the way when you learn things. Now it does seem so abundantly clear that we can't do that. We would never make Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford. We also can't go do something with Luke Skywalker that isn't Mark Hamill." This quote was in regards to casting the younger actors to play the legendary characters, and Kathleen did receive a lot of flack for this comment, and she eventually backtracked a few weeks later. So then she said this: "I never say never. It's certainly not something that we're doing with any intention right now. We're still talking about Lando with Donald Glover, for instance, but I don't think we would intentionally just look back at some of the characters like Luke and Leia and whatnot and decide arbitrarily to do a story. There would have to be a really strong reason why." Kind of ironic, we get Leia as a kid in Kenobi, and Luke comes back as CGI form in Mando. So it's like they say one thing, they do another, and if anything, I think the child Leia was great in Kenobi, and I think CGI Luke was awesome in Mando. So it can work, you just have to write good content. Why can't you just come out and say that, hey, we did not do a great job with the sequel trilogy, and Star Wars was in a dark place at that time, so people really weren't into watching the Solo movie, or they went in with a little bit of a sour attitude. And look, I'm actually kind of mad at fans for shitting on that movie. I don't think you should punish that movie and the people that made that movie because of what happened in The Last Jedi. It was a fun adventure movie that provided us with an origin story for Han Solo. It might not have been the greatest story ever told in Star Wars, but it was fun, it was entertaining, and I actually liked the casting choices. I thought they all did a tremendous job. And it's funny because there were some in the fan base, me included, that wanted a Solo 2 literally because they teased Darth Maul at the end. You know, Solo running in the Maul and maybe having a conflict with him in the second movie would have been awesome. And it's kind of a shame that Disney has not brought back Maul in live action because they ended up finding a lot of success with him in Clone Wars and Rebels. But my point is that Disney/Lucasfilm likes to blame Solo and toxic fans for the lack of success back then. And yes, fans are toxic. I get frustrated with them. I'm not going to sit here and say it's all the company's fault, because I think fans did play a role in the lack of success with Solo. So, like I said, I'm conflicted, guys. I'm really trying hard to keep going with Star Wars. I'm trying to stay positive. I'm trying not to be one of those people that calls for Kathleen Kennedy's job, but I'm going to be honest, there needs to be some better decision-making going on, especially within the next couple of years, because Star Wars really needs a long stretch of success if it's going to bounce back from the sequel trilogy, and you're never going to make every single fan happy, but at the same time, don't disrespect the characters and the stories that came from George Lucas, and just be honest when you make mistakes. Again, I do appreciate that they're taking a different approach, they're going to slow down. I think we will find out sooner rather than later when the future movies are going to come out and what they're going to be about. And again, if Disney does end up focusing on more sequel trilogy stuff, then they better be prepared for backlash and they better have something good cooked up, because the sequel trilogy is a very, to this day, still a very tender, sensitive spot with Star Wars fans. But I will save those thoughts for another video, because you best believe I'll be making a video on when that stuff gets announced. Thanks for watching the video. Please like, subscribe, and share the video. I appreciate whatever support you could give for the channel. Thanks again for watching, and may the Force be with you.